The Biden administration is currently preparing for a potential attack on Israel by Iran and its proxies. Meanwhile, tomorrow, officials from the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar will restart negotiations for a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel's sending a delegation to the talks, but a representative for Hamas says the militant group will not be participating. Margaret Brennan joins us now. She is CBS News' chief foreign affairs correspondent and moderator of Face the Nation, program you should watch on Sundays. Good to see you. What is the latest we know about this potential attack on Israel by either Iran or its proxies, or both?
Or both. Well, or both is the question here, Ed. What we know is that Hezbollah, which is based in the north, in Lebanon, could launch an attack with little to no warning. They, however, according to U.S. officials I've spoken with, want to coordinate with Iran. And Iran, in the U.S. assessment, is waiting. And that there isn't an expectation that they will act in the next few days. Now, things can change. However, the assessment is that we will be probably on hold until the weekend. But there's infighting within Iran that is being monitored. They don't know yet how they want to respond to this. So in the absence of that decision, the U.S. is doing everything they can to delay. The president sent his top Mideast advisors, Brett McGurk, to Egypt, Amos Hochstein, an envoy to Lebanon, where the United States is getting messages through to Hezbollah. And the CIA director is going to Doha tomorrow. The Secretary of State remains here in the U.S., but we saw earlier today he was on the phone speaking to the Prime Minister of Qatar, which is very much trying to be a peacemaker here. The idea being if you get a ceasefire in Gaza, it lowers the tensions. It gives Iran an excuse to step back and say, oh, well, there's progress, and Hezbollah may still want to retaliate, but has less of an incentive to do so.
I mean, we're so consumed by American politics, we forget that there's a new president in Iran anyway. So that's part of what this is that he's still trying to get his bearings.
That's exactly right. The supreme leader is the man who really runs the country, of course, over it all, but is allowing, according to the officials I speak with, this infighting to play out. The new president, I'm told, is supposed to meet with his cabinet, I believe, this Friday, and there's the expectation that they won't take action before that.
In the midst of all of this, there's been word of about a $20 billion authorization in sales of F-15s and other equipment to Israel, but that's something that's not showing up in Israel until 2026 at the earliest. So remind us, and so that's future looking. Remind us what else the U.S. then is doing to help Israel now in the event that something happens in the coming days.
Well, those deliveries are, the State Department has to sign off, and Congress was authorized. That's going to go. But like you just said, the deliveries are between 2026 and 2029. But in the immediate term, the United States remains the chief weapons supplier to the state of Israel. That has not changed at any point in this conflict. What is interesting is in the past few days, what the United States is doing to back Israel up. And that is the point at which the United States would have to step in to back up Israel if their defenses were overwhelmed. That is the expectation. So to try to prevent the attack from escalating to that level, to essentially starting a war that Israel could not finish on its own without American help, the U.S. has been surging assets to the regions. That's F-22 fighter jets, F-35s, carrier strike groups, ships that can fire missiles, trying to say through this muscular posture, as President Biden likes to say, just don't.
Right.
That's why they're sending assets there. They're not intending to use all of them. If there is an April-style attack from Iran, from the east, the United States is expected to try to help intercept some of those. That big question mark is what happens with Lebanese Hezbollah, because that is something that could overwhelm the United States if there's a Israel, if there's a multi-axis attack.
So based on all your conversations with people here and over there, how hopeful are they, how realistic are they about a potential truce?
At this point, President Biden is surging diplomats to try to stop a regional conflict. That's the thing we've been on edge about since October. Imagine just how horrifically bloody that war in Gaza is, and then amplify it around the region. That's what they're trying to prevent from happening. So that's where they are, and just trying to delay or stop a regional war. In terms of the potential ceasefire in the 25 miles that is the Gaza Strip, there is hope that the United States will show up with a bridging proposal. That is the CIA director arriving with a piece of paper that says, here's how I get both of you to yes, here's the incentives, and puts that on the table. There is, it's being described as a final bridging proposal. This is the same deal that's been floating around since May that President Biden got up and spoke to the American people about. This is trying to get them to yes. And there has been deep skepticism that the Israeli prime minister wants to get to yes. You've heard it from some of the hostage families himself.
Right.
He just assassinated the political negotiator who was part of this, the leader of Hamas on the political side. And then on Hamas's front, there's deep doubt that Yahya Sinwar, the man who actually matters, the architect of that bloody, horrific attack, actually would give up his greatest leverage. And that is those human beings he is holding hostage and has been since October the 7th.
And just imagine if President Biden were still running for re-election and trying to orchestrate all this at the same time.
4 days before the Democratic National Convention starts a ceasefire negotiation. And let's be clear, all of this has political ramifications here in the United States. And we saw hostage families get up on that stage at the RNC and appeal. But they don't want the politics to be an impediment. They just want their loved ones home. Right.
And as far as we know, as of now, at least, none of them are set to speak in Chicago at the Democratic Convention, although we'll see. Yeah. Margaret Brennan, great to see you as always. Thank you for being here.